Welcome, everyone. It's really nice to have you here on a Saturday morning. What a dedication you all have. Great. I'm not going to delay any further since we already had our setup time. And I'm just going to say, let's just dive right in. We know that in information security, we all have two main challenges to deal with. Most of you have the challenge of dealing with a technical problem, securing information in your systems, in your networks, in your machines, in your organization's machines. And then there is the second challenge, the human one, people. What happens with the ones that have access to this information and can provide access to this information? What happens with the ones that know too much? The ones that deal with sensitive and a lot of times expensive information on a day-to-day and can distribute and sell it while they shouldn't. I'm going to start with a story. And therefore, we are going to forget about the fact that we have slides. First of all, because the clicker doesn't work. The story is about Gabrielle. Gabrielle was a woman back in the days during the Cold War in Germany, while Germany was divided between two parts, East and West Germany, through the Berlin Wall. Gabrielle was sitting by the river one day, just enjoying her day before going to work, while she suddenly saw a man coming and sitting next to her and started talking to her. That man was called Frank. According to her own account, he was the man of her dreams. She saw him, they talked for 5 minutes, she knew that was the man she always wanted. He was the man she always wanted. He was working on a project that was promoting world peace. He wanted to make the world a better place, so lo and behold, soon, while they were getting to know each other more and more, he asked her for some support with his projects. He asked for documents from her work. What was the case? She did it. She did it because she wanted to help his mission, she wanted to help, she believed in his cause, and she really, really liked him, to be honest. She gave those documents, she gave a few, then she gave more, she gave some more, she gave way too many, because he was the man of her dreams. And he was so because she was thoroughly profiled on the background from a team of experts. You see, she was the translator for the American embassy on the west side. And Frank was a spy from the intelligence community of the West Germany. He made her give away thousands of documents, which she gladly did. She didn't know why, but she did. And she helped compromise a hell lot of intelligence missions that way. Now, was she the only one? No, she was not. There were about 40 women that got convicted in West Germany for espionage. And there were a hell lot of spies, which they called Romeos, who on the other side were getting awarded for their amazing work with their assets. That was the brainchild of Markus Wolf, who said that was a very cost-effective way of stealing secrets, or in other words, it was a very cost-effective way of breaching security and breaching information security, the one that existed at the time. Were they even handsome? No, they looked like they didn't look all that great, but you know what? They didn't have to, because they cashed on psychology. They cashed on plain human psychology, something that works again and again and again. And although this is a very old story, this continues to happen today with different means. Now, you might make the little connection that here we talk about profiling and social media. So this is a more modern way. We now have more assets to use. And in Wolf's words, he said that the ends did not always justify the means we chose to employ, of course. And he also said that as long as there is espionage, corporate espionage as we have it today, there will be Romeos seducing unsuspected Juliets with access to secrets. After all, I was running an intelligence service and not a lonely hearts club. Do you think it is any different today? Do you think that now that people need access to systems and information, and they know that technology is hard to get, do you think they're not going to exploit the good old vulnerabilities that exist in humans, that work consistently, and they work successfully? They do. But who am I to talk about all that? I am a psychologist, and I am a social engineer as well. In fact, I have been in this line of business and in InfoSec since I can practically remember myself because of my father, who is a cybersecurity expert as well, and he got me involved into projects and into things since I was really, really young, and I was also really, really curious. So I was finding more and more with him and through him, and I ended up working in the field. Today I am a trainer and consultant, and I am also a speaker in Europe, US, and Asia. It's surprising, and you're going to see that the problems are the same all around the world. And I focus on the human element of security. Now, we all know that there are 4 main ways of breaching security. Network breaches, software breaches, physical breaches, or hardware breaches, as you call it, and, of course, what we talk about today and now, the human exploitation. But how important is it really? Well, we were already warned about it from DARPA 2-3 years ago. They put out a project, they said, while we focus the vast majority of security efforts on protecting computers and networks, more than 80% of cyber attacks and over 70% of those from nation states are initiated by exploiting humans rather than computer and net security flaws. That was 2017, what about today? NISA came out this year, 2019, and did a categorization, a taxonomy practically, in their threat landscape report of 2018. And what did they say? They say that the #1 observed threat that exists today in our cybersecurity landscape is, you guessed it, human exploitation, and not just the phishing emails that everybody knows, and not just phishing emails are a big celebrity out there in terms of what happens, and everybody pays a lot of attention to them. Yes, they work. Yes, they are good. Yes, there is a lot of damage through them, but it's not the only one. And this is what they reported as well. It's the whole spectrum of human exploitation. Emails, phone calls, impersonations, you name it, everything that has to do with breaching security through finding vulnerabilities in humans. And this is also what we talk about. Now, how many of you are familiar with social engineering and how it works by a show of hands? Very nice. So you know that it is not just about all about charm and luck, and it's not all about just having it in you and being socially adept. No, they are very planned, they are very organized, and they have a strategy, always. A strategy that has 2 parts. Planning and preparation, very important, and execution. It starts with OSINT, gathering everything and anything they can about an organization or about a person. Your deepest, darkest secrets, they are particularly good for that. Targeting and identifying who would be a good target, who would yield the best ROI, the best return for their efforts, and who would yield the lowest risk of detection. And after identifying who the target would be, making sure they have a pretext or a story through which they can approach this person and ultimately exploit him. When it comes to the execution, again, the steps are usually pretty standard. This is a backbone. They approach, they get a certain level of trust, you feel like you're on the same page, exploit this trust and disappear. And ideally, the other person will never, ever know that something went on, that something happened, that information was leaked that was not supposed to be leaked. And that's why today we have a lot of breaches where in the news they write, we don't know what was the initial stage of compromise. We don't know how they had this inside information, what happened, how did they get them? Well, maybe you can now guess why they didn't have this information. So certainly, OSINT, open source intelligence, is a very big part of it, and it is a very important part of it because it's the foundation of the whole attack. But there is a subdivision of OSINT that we're going to talk about today, and this is SOCMINT. SOCMINT is the social media intelligence. Now, all of us, penetration testers, social engineers, before we start finding out who we want to target, we are going to go and search for social media profiles. Because people talk too much, and we want to hear what they have to say and what they have to expose. So social media is our go-to. In reality, social media was a very big focus and a very big point of attack in 2017. We had companies Yeah, we had companies bringing out reports saying that about 20% of businesses were infected by malware directly through social media. We will see how this can happen. Employees experiencing cybercrime more often on social media than the celebrities, phishing emails, and Facebook scams being the #1 used ways to breach networks. Because when we are on social media, we are relaxed. We are in a friendly environment, but are we really? Depends. How many of you have people on social media that you don't really know? Nobody wants to say. As always. Social media is still utilized today. Why? Because we see it as platforms for sharing and staying updated with friends, but attackers see it as a very, very nice, fertile ground to gather information and target. They use what they find in order to get a better direction about how they are going to approach you, really. Their approach will depend on how much you say, who you are as a person, what moves you, what are your interests in life, because they need to be able to hook you somehow, and then their creativity. And this is why we have a lot of different types of attacks as well, because they don't depend on something standard, they depend on who you are when they are tailored. We talked about the Romeos and what happened back then. I told you that this is something that still happens today in different ways. And when you have specific, tailored, targeted attacks, most of the times there is a nation state behind them because that takes time and that takes a lot of investment to get done. So, and of course, when you have somebody getting compromised on an emotional level, there is no evidence left behind that are as hard as what happens with digital forensics. And nobody wants to report it, so there are barely ever any reports on social media. While a lot of things happen on that domain, nobody wants to report them, they hide it. But there was one case that was reported, and that was the study case of Mia Ash. And that's because she was an APT. And she was very persistent. She hit a lot of organizations and a lot of specific people. Now, Mia Ash was the result of a threat actor called Cobalt Gypsy. She targeted the critical infrastructure in the Middle East and North Africa, and mainly government, defense, oil, financial services, telecommunications, things that belong to the critical infrastructure. Now, Mia Ash was not exactly what they wanted to do from the very beginning. She was Plan B. Plan A was large-scale phishing attacks, delivering a poopy rat, a remote access tool. But that didn't really work very well. They didn't pan out the way they wanted, so they decided to do a more tailored approach. They created these accounts on LinkedIn and pretty much all social media of Mia Ash, a very beautiful young lady that had a lot of interests in life and wanted to share them with others. And they decided to target people. But I'm going to cut this story in half. Keep it in the back of your heads. We will return to it and kind of talk about how this all really works out in the end. What happens in your social media accounts. So you have two possible case scenarios. You might search in the social media accounts and find these quick opportunistic attacks. One piece of information that you can utilize on spot and just go home early at night, or you actually will need to do a long game. Now, when it comes to the opportunistic attacks, I will show you a few posts, and you will see how you can deliver an attack really, really fast through them. For example, these are all real posts. A person asking a specific bank and saying that they urgently need to generate a bank account statement at work. How do I go about that? Or a person asking a different company something about the tickets going wrong and asking for an email for a person to resend them the tickets on their email accounts. What is a possible attack that can really quickly happen out of that and the person will respond to because they expect it? Spoof a phishing email, and they will most likely click on it. I should be more concerned about my work, but I'm really not. Possible attack? Well, you know that if they don't really care about their work, They don't really care about the work environment. They definitely don't care about security. So if you bring out a good story and a USB, they will not really chew on it too much. They don't care. Chances are they will plug it in. Good target. Same goes with people that really hate their jobs. They're not going to think about security. They might even want to purposefully hurt their companies because they hate them anyways. This is when they might as well turn into insider threats. So what happens there? Again, they will not think twice about protecting the organization. Good targets. And then we have back again the case of the Romeos and the espionage case, people that are really lonely, people that say, I'm not alone because loneliness is my only friend. Romance fraudsters work really well with them, unfortunately. And this is, of course, something that professionals cannot use as an attack, but criminals do use all the time, and it consistently works. Again, something that professionals cannot use, but criminals use consistently is bribery and blackmail. And when it comes to bribery, practically people that need money right now, or people that have an addiction, they are also being driven by that addiction. They are victims to their addiction. So if an attacker comes by and offers them money to support that, or to support a very deep need they have right now, chances are that they will do it, because this will have a higher priority than protecting a company, especially if they think they can get away with it. Good targets. With blackmail, while this happens again, it's not very easy to use social media about that, but you can find little indications on social media, like possibly affairs, and then just dig a little bit further, have your angle, and see whether they can deliver an attack. So basically, and generally, it is a very good thing not to expose vulnerabilities on social media, and to generally be a little bit more cautious and conscious about what you post out there, because it can and will be used, especially if you have open profiles. But say you're a social media savvy, you don't do these things, or you think twice, you hold a professional image on social media, you don't really do these things. What happens then? What happens if you don't do any of these things and you're very careful, but you could yield a high ROI for an attacker? We're going to talk about the second example, profiling. I'm going to show you the profile of a real person, a real individual, the only one who allowed me to scrutinize him publicly multiple times. So, just for the sake of the example, but the principles are the same throughout any profiles, and think of your own when we talk about this. One thing about social media profiles is what they show about us. They show who we are, yes, but remember that it shows what you want others to see practically, which means that yes, it has elements of you, but it's not really entirely you. It's the way you want to be seen by others, the way you want others to view you and treat you, which is perfect for social engineers, because this is exactly what they want to give you. They want to give you what you want so that you will like them, and so that they can get you on their side. So it's you curated. What are specific aspects that they will look for? They're going to look into your personal brand, the general way you carry yourself. Are you confident? Do you know what you're doing? Do you have insecurities? Do you have unmet needs that are very obvious to be figured out? What is going on? The selection of your words. Do you express loneliness? Do you express that you need certain things that you don't have and possibly they could give to you for the exchange of a little something? What are your interests, your activities? This is ground, we're going to talk about it, through which you can build rapport with someone. Your work responsibilities, going back to the ROI. Would you be a good value? Of good value, would you be a good target? Social life indications, and of course, subjects one feels strong about. The profile. The real person that I told you about is him, for the sake of our example. Now all you see is some pictures, but I can guess that you already can have certain thoughts about that person, about who they are. And why do you have certain thoughts about him? Because of the shadow talk. The shadow talk is the things that we say without speaking. It includes body language. Is the person confident? Do they have an open body language? He does. Is he closed up and reserved and probably shy and probably doesn't want to talk to you ever because he doesn't want to talk to anyone ever? You look into these things, this is shadow talk. You look into the variety of their expressions. Why? Because ultimately you're going to know if this person is going to be reserved and not talk really a lot, or they are going to be willing to talk. They are expressive. They use their face to communicate with the outer world. And especially when you put that on social media, you know that you can generally appear very expressive and potentially be expressive with strangers. Now, you don't see his face, but I did, and I'm telling you, he's very expressive. You look at the content, the variety of his activities, to see whether it is a person that has almost nothing going on in his life, or whether it is a person that has a lot of going on in his life. If, for example, he was a person that would have nothing going on in his life, you would know that he probably would want some thrill. He would probably want his little adventure. He would probably want to feel alive. Now, this target has a lot of things going on, so you would need to think in a different way. You look at the colors, and why? There is a psychological principle that connects practically the colors we feel attracted to and we choose to portray in our profiles, and the way we feel emotionally inside. People that are highly depressed, people that are sad and sorry, usually tend to have very black and white and heavily dark pictures. Melancholic people, people that feel too poetic, people that have some darkness inside, tend to have harder, darker colors. And people that are euphoric and confident and generally more happy tend to have happier colors. And now you can see what's going to pop up in the profile matrix with this person. Locations, again, as we said before, does he walk around? Does he stay at home? Does he have an interesting life? You look into these things, and you look into other people. Are there others? How many? Are there different people? Does he stick with one specific group, or is he willing to get to know others and get out of his comfort zone? This was just information. You need to categorize it, so that you can analyze it. So we have the profiling matrix. The profiling matrix has 4 columns. The personality traits somebody has that portray through their social media. Interests, wants, because we all want to act towards our best interest, and their vulnerabilities, if they are there. And you look into the 3 domains of everybody's lives: our self-image, our social life, and our work life. These are the 3 main categories of what's going on in our life. And as we said before, he looks pretty confident, he looks pretty expressive, his facial expressions. He definitely appears to have an interest in fitness. He definitely appears to have an interest in traveling and being very alive and active. And he's into social events and events with other people. So you put that all in. But these, so far, are just assumptions. You need to strengthen these assumptions so that you can better rely on them. So by now, you just have assumptions. You look further. You look into the words he uses. You look into patterns. And you look into the way he expresses himself. Now, the way he expresses himself, because this is also a little bit of a marketing profile, he is a gym manager with access to a lot of records of CEOs and high-profile individuals. Keep that in the back of your heads, because a lot of attacks work by proxy. His quote, however, a little cheesy. It's not my fault, sorry. Sorry in advance. He writes, "Hustle to make your dreams your reality. Life is a game played to win. And let your hustle be louder than your words." I have already collected similar things. What does that tell you about the personality? It tells you that he's ambitious. Is this ambition coming out? Is it working? He writes, "Don't decrease the goal, increase the effort." He talks about a goal he once put in life and he made it happen. And actually, he talks many times about goals that he actually made happen, that he succeeded upon. So you also understand that he is determined. You keep it in the back of your head, you're going to fill it in later. You look further. They care about income. I care about impact. And lifting humans has always been more fun than lifting weights, in the similar thing of this whole fitness interest. And you understand that he wants to be influential as well. He wants to have an impact on people. He cares about people. He wants a connection. And this is also very nice now for social engineers, and it matters very much on whether you will approach him and how. He says, what is life without a little risk? Make your life an adventure. And again, he talks about adventure, which means that he's relatively willing to step out of his comfort zone and to do things he wouldn't have done otherwise, or hasn't done before. And this is important for you to know, because people that are very conservative are generally going to be harder targets because they will be scared to step out of their comfort zone. When somebody is being socially engineered, it practically requires you to do something you wouldn't otherwise do. So you need someone that is willing to take risks and do stuff for you. So the fact that he's adventurous is suddenly really, really useful. And then the fact that he's also an extrovert, and especially the parts where he says, making new friends should be part of every day and trip, and the best. Today, as I'm having a breakfast, I start chatting with a random guy next to me. And now you know, as you knew already before you suspected, that he is an extrovert, and that if you approach him, you can engage him. If you can approach him the right way, you can probably go really far with it. You put it all in the matrix. You strengthen the assumptions you had before. Now you know he's an extrovert, you know you can approach him, you know he cares about people and engaging with them and having an impact on them. You know he wants to advance, so this is a motivating factor. If you give him an incentive that helps him advance, as a third actor, you could have him. And you know he wants recognition and admiration and all these things. And that he will talk with you. But you don't know anything about his vulnerabilities or his professional life. What do? Okay, of course, there is LinkedIn. You can do a Google search, but to understand how far this can go, you can practically connect the points you had before and make deductions. How many of you would think that a person like him would be a back office type of person? I don't see any hand, and you are correct. He would never be a back office type of person. He would always and forever want to be in the front line, and he would want to have contact with the customers, which is very good for you. You know nothing about his vulnerabilities, but there is again a general psychological principle that says that if we pursue one goal with all our strength and with all our heart, it means that at the same time, we try to avoid, by all means, its opposite. So you take his wants and you reverse them. What this person would really hate to be is ineffective. What this person would really hate to be is to be perceived as a failure. He would hate to be uninteresting. If you were to step at him and tell him, look, I have shared with you all these things, we had this whole conversation, but man, you haven't taught me anything, so this has been pretty boring for me. Sorry to tell you that. He will want to prove himself. He will want to prove that he has something to offer. And if you had told him about all of your work problems and say that, look, I told about all of my work problems, you haven't shared one with me, this is getting really boring, he will feel the need to prove you wrong. So you put that into account and you use it strategically. How does all that work? The personality traits are used to build a rapport. You know who that person is, you know what he responds to, we like people that we have similarities with, so you use all that. The interests and wants are hooks, practically. If a person is interested about a topic, he's going to engage about it. If he has certain wants that he wants to achieve and you can provide them for him, chances are he will consider it. The vulnerabilities you use strategically when the rest doesn't really work on or doesn't seem to be going too well, so that you can trigger him a little bit and trigger a response. And then, of course, you adjust the approach according to how it goes. You always need to improvise a little bit. After all, you have so much to work with. Now, about your own pretext. If you are a social engineer, what do you do with all that? Well, as we said, we like people that are like us, so you're going to use all that. Chances are the social engineer is going to look a lot like you. Remember Mia Ash? That's what she did. She decided to build profiles that just appeared to want to build connections with people and establish rapport, but mainly she wanted to do her research on them. She established connections through common interests, mainly photography, and she started talking with people. Once she had established that connection, she started escalating them. She escalated them from LinkedIn to Facebook, to Instagram, to other social media accounts, to a phone number. The conversation kept going. She had a lot to say. They had so much in common. And eventually, she would also get their email work, the work email. And once that would be provided, she would send at some point an attachment saying that, oh, by the way, I have to submit this portfolio and I really need your help on that. Can you just check to really fast because I have to do it in half an hour? Can you just tell me if everything is all right? I would really appreciate your feedback. Do you think it was successful? Yeah, of course it was successful. It was extremely successful. It was so successful that they kept doing it again and again and again and again. And SecureWorks ended up having so much data to work with because it was so efficient and effective. And you saw how it happened. And you know that if it had happened to you, chances are you might have clicked on that as well. The file would deliver that poopy rat, the one that people didn't click on when the phishing email was distributed. But they did click on when it was delivered by Mia, who was a person they felt they knew. So we said before, we see in the news a lot of breaches and we always say, oh, there was information that was inside information. We don't know how they got them. It looks like such a big mystery. How did they reach that? How did they initiate the attack? How did that work out? Do you kind of wonder how that worked out now, or do you kind of know how that worked out? Do you think that if she continued the conversation, if she had gotten specific questions, if she had asked specific questions, would the people have responded? Would they have potentially leaked things about their workplaces they were not supposed to? Probably. Social engineers use social media to cultivate relationships, to build relationships. They do not shy away from building long-term relationships, even, especially when it comes to espionage. But always remember that this relationship and the person on the other side is not really a person for them, it is an asset for them, and it is treated as an asset. But it doesn't look that way. Now that I made you all paranoid, I have to also give an afterthought on avoiding this paranoia, actually, because you might think, okay, then maybe we shouldn't post anything, everything could be used against us, anything could be used against us. Yes, it could, sorry. But don't get paranoid. It's not about not sharing anything. It's also not about locking yourselves in your rooms, putting newspapers on your windows and not talking to anyone anymore. No. The point here is about boundaries. Know what your boundaries are and enforce them. And when people ask you very nosy information about your jobs, remember that you can always say, no, I'm sorry, but I cannot disclose that. Or no, I'm not going to talk about that. And the users need to know that they have to do that as well. Put a limit and put a boundary to what you share and what you do. And when you know that it's policy not to open attachments from outside resources, enforce that and actually stick with it, and that can convince to do otherwise just because a cute lady or whoever you have a connection with suddenly decided to send you an attachment at work. So this talk is not about not doing anything anymore and hiding from the world. It's about enforcing boundaries. Remember, this is war. Your companies are castles, so you try to protect the castle. What do? You do have walls, you do have physical security. That's there. It's there for you. You all here work in enforcing the security weapon situation. Back in the days when we had castles to protect, these used to be cannons, these used to be weapons, these used to be anything that could work to deter attackers. We do this today with antiviruses, with security systems, with all the implementation, the technical implementation that we try to do, and it works really well, and it increases and it gets better and better. So that's nicely getting there. But then what happens when your population opens back doors to strangers? Do they know who the enemy is? Do they know what they look like, how they act like? And do they know how to defend when the time comes to defend? And what am I getting at with all that? Is that a security mindset and culture matters. And while a lot of you think that, oh, come on, it's such a waste of money and it's such a waste of time to try to build a security culture, to make people more aware, to get them to know and to get them to care about security and what security is about, because they will never care. No, they will care as long as you do it right. Certainly, it's a sensitive point to make them care, and it's not going to happen if you just give them a training series full of videos that they do not connect with. But there are ways to make them care, and you should invest in that, because this is the environment that your whole technical infrastructure is going to operate in. And if your technical infrastructure is amazing, but the user is totally unaware and is used against you, then the efforts are for nothing, are futile. Keep that in mind. Keep your mind on the user, do train them, do care about them, do tell them things when you come in contact with them so that they can slowly build a security mindset. I know that it's not going to happen overnight, but it can happen, it will eventually happen. And it is their personal responsibility as well. It's not just yours. Thank you.